Hello everybody and welcome back to the project for the multiplayer game where we ran into a small issue last episode and I realized why exactly that was happening. That was happening because if we go into the UDP here, actually it's not in the UDP, it is actually in the, this is a server, that's the problem. If we go into the client here, and we go into the UDP, the problem is because we added in the timestamp. And we weren't compensating for that, so it was trying to decrypt the timestamp, which wasn't encrypted. This is the next day, but it didn't actually take me that long to figure it out. I worked on it for like 5 minutes, and I was like, oh yeah, timestamp. So here's how we fix that. It's already fixed in this code, but I'll just go over real quickly how I fixed it. If we go into the server here, we're already grabbing the timestamp off of the end of the string. So we already know how many bytes the timestamp is. So all we did is I added in a time length variable in the process ACC message. We pass that in here when we are parsing out the message type. And then we added in int time length here. And then all we do is we also pass timestamp length to decrypt content, and then in decrypt content, the only thing we need to do with that is subtract it out of here. And actually, I was doing +1 previously, but that wasn't working. Those parentheses can go. So that's fantastic. That's all we need then, and this works perfectly. So let me just prove it via testing. Let me sanitize the database here. How do I delete this row? This is the one I created previously, and I just think that, yeah, delete that record. There we go. And then we will write those changes. So here's the database browser. You can see here that this is in our channel MMO server bin debug, core NetApp 3.1 MMO server db.db. So currently all that's in here is the accounts table, and on the accounts table there is nothing. Wonderful. So let's run the server. Oh, there's one more thing I want to do, actually. Because I put in this line here just for debug purposes, we no longer need this. It's irrelevant. So we'll get rid of that, and then we'll run this. Wonderful. Complex problems often have simple solutions in programming. I was still running the successfully logged in test. Technically, it hadn't successfully logged in, but it did successfully create the account. So we're going to create ourselves an account here, asdf@asdf.com, asdf@asdf.com, and our username is asdf, and our password is also asdf. Wonderful. Yeah, we want to be notified. We're over the age of 18. Wonderful. Technically, the encryption handshake isn't done yet because of that issue we discussed with how long it can take Unity. There we go. So we'll create that account. Successfully logged in. If we hop on over to the server, you can see user ASDF successfully created an account. Wonderful. Now, if we go into the database here, then we should be able to, I believe, refresh this. Yes. Technically, this is account ID 2 because I deleted that. Let's fix that there. This should be account ID 1. And then our username is ASDF, our email is asdf@asdf.com. This is the random salt that was appended to our password, and this is our hashed password, so we don't actually know that this password is ASDF, and it would be incredibly difficult to figure out that this password is ASDF. Of course, ASDF is not a secure password, and people could just type in ASDF. But this also keeps track of our last login time, as well as our last IP. Wonderful. So that's account creation working perfectly. So next, we need to do authentication. We have an account. Now we need to be able to log into the account. So let's hop over in my notes here to the server project here, because we need to have another type of message. So let's open up our comms enums. And this is going to be an ATH message, and this is an authentication request, and this should contain header, and I believe this contains another encrypted credentials CSV. I'm just double checking that. Header account name password. We're going to say encrypted credentials CSV, and all this will contain is account name password. Wonderful. Okay, so we're now going to hop into the server, or rather into the client project, and make sure that the client also knows about this message type, because that needs to be a thing. There we go. Now, if the client receives one of these, that really probably shouldn't be happening. Let me just pull this open, because essentially what we need to do is case message types dot ATH message. We received an authentication request from the server? Question mark? This shouldn't be happening. So we're just going to copy this warning from the con message, because the server isn't going to try to authenticate with the client. Client received ATH message. This shouldn't happen. Wonderful. So, with that having been done, let's see here. Yep, that should not happen. So we don't need to parse that or anything, and we'll just hop over to the server now, and we'll deal with the server receiving an ATH message. So that would be here in message processing. And let me just pull open this code on my other screen. Fantastic. So this would be case message types dot ACH. Or not ACH, ATH. What am I talking about? This is not a transfer from a bank account. ATH message requesting account authentication. Excellent. So all we're going to do here is we're going to do basically what we did for the account creation. We're going to make a method for this. Process ATH message. And we're going to take in here simply received, which in this case would be probably raw message. We're going to take in the header length. We're going to take in time.length +1. And we're going to take in client session, because we're still going to need to remove that timestamp. So that's still going to be a thing we're going to need to do. We can go ahead and minimize process ACC message. That function is done. And down below that, we are going to do process ATH message. So public void process ATH message. And we are going to take in this case, once again, we are going to take in a byte. In fact, we're going to take in literally the same thing as up here. So I'm just going to copy these parameters. Byte raw message, int header length, int type timestamp length, and session client session. We need exactly the same information to process an authentication message rather. So we're going to say this message is encrypted, of course. We'll need to decrypt it. Wonderful. So this is going to work basically the same way as the ACC message. Almost exactly, actually. So we're just going to say string decrypted equals decrypt content. And we're going to do received.raw message. In fact, in this case, it's just raw message, because I changed the structure slightly. And then we're going to do header length and timestamp length. Wonderful. So that's all we should need to do there, and I just want to double check. Yeah, that's all we should need to do there. Wonderful. And this is just like in the ACC message. 0 is account name, 1 is password. So we don't actually have the information for the email field or the notify box. All we have is the account name and password here. So string array called credentials equals decrypted.split on commas, since we're doing a comma separated value. I just thought of something. I just now thought of this. What if your password contains a comma? That would break this. We'll put a pin in that for right now. So, actually, let me just make a to-do text file here. And we'll make it inside of the client, just out here in the assets. Can we just create a text file from here? I'm not sure that we can. We may have to show this in Explorer. Okay, wonderful. And all we're going to do here is go into the assets, and we are going to do a new text document, and we are going to simply call this to do. Okay. There we go. Because I want to just put a pin in that. So we are just going to say any credentials, any login credentials containing a comma will break things. Maybe fix that. Or just disallow commas. That would work too. So we're going to save that. Excellent. And we're going to hop back into the server here. And we're going to continue with this for now. So, let's see if the account name is valid. So we need to check if the account name exists in the database. Or rather, we need to check if it doesn't exist. So, if not database manager dot check if exists on the table accounts, where field account name equals value credentials 0. So, if we have an account name on the table that matches the account name provided, then this is not going to be triggered. This is only if we don't have it. So, we can say, nope, this is an invalid account. Notify client and bail on this attempt. Okay, so we can send, at this point, message types.arp, that's an authentication response. And this is 0 IA for invalid account. And we've already implemented what the client does with this in the net manager here. So if we receive an IA, which is, if I can recall where exactly it handles this, parse ARP message. Yeah, right here. If it receives an IA, then it will already output account creation failed, invalid account name. Now, this is not actually account creation. So this would just be authentication failed, because IA does not come from account creation. IP would be the same thing, actually. Authentication failed. Invalid password this time. And then this would just be authentication failed, unknown error. This is a catch-all for if the client doesn't actually know what the error is. Okay, so we return an IA error here for invalid account, and we send this to client session.address. Wonderful. And then we don't need to do anything else. We already know that this authentication attempt has failed, so we will simply return. Wonderful. Now, we need to say, they got past this. They got past the account name check. So, account name checks out. Let's see the password then. First things first, let's get the salt from the DB. Okay, so we need to say, well, actually, let's get the hash from the DB. So, string hash equals, this is really more compare the hash. Yeah, let's compare the hash from the DB. So, string hash equals hash password, and this is going to be credentials 1, that's our password in the array, and then database manager dot get data. We need to get the accounts here, or rather we need to get the get data from the table accounts, where the field salt or rather we need to get salt from the table accounts, where field account name equals credentials 0, which of course is our account name in that array of 2 strings. So we've got our hash now. Or rather, we've got our salt. This should really be string salt. Let's grab the salt from the DB. Okay, that's all that is that grabs our salt. So, if not salt equals database manager. Actually, no, this is our whole password hash. What am I talking about? I'm so confused. This needs to be hash. And we'll put that there. And let's grab this. I was right the first time. Let's compare the hash from the DB. So this is going to be database manager.getData. And in this case, we need to get data on the table accounts. And we want to get the hashed password, where field account name equals value credentials 0. So now we're grabbing the hashed password and comparing that to the one we just created. And we created that one with the credentials that we got from the client and the salt that we had stored. So now we're comparing it to see if it matches the hash that we have on file. Do we need an extra parenthesis? I think we do. Is that enough parentheses? Yes, that is enough parentheses. So, if this does not return true, then we can say, nope, this is a wrong password. Now keep in mind, we don't know what the password is. We just know if this is the right password or not, which is nice. So we are going to send message types.arp, and this is going to respond with 0 for failure, and then IP for Y, invalid password. And then this is going to say, send this to client session.address. Wonderful. And of course, once again, we're going to return this is a failed attempt. However, if that succeeded, then we should next check to see if this user is already authenticated. So, if this user is already authenticated, we should disconnect, with a D, disconnect that connection. So we need to iterate through our connections that we already have and check to see if they are, in fact, the person that just authenticated. So, like, for example, if they log in on a laptop and they're working and moving around and playing the game on their laptop, and then they get home and they log in on their desktop, then it should disconnect the laptop automatically. So, for each, we're going to iterate through the key value pair, IP endpoint, and session S in sessions. All we need to do is we need to check if s.value.authenticated, and if I can find the and key, there we go, s.value.account name, not account ID, account name equals credentials 0. Why is this causing an issue? It doesn't have account name in session. Okay, we need to put one in. Public string account name. Like that. Excellent. Okay. Now there's an account name there. So if the account name is equal to the credentials, and of course we're not setting the account name yet, we will in a moment. If the account name is equal to the credentials, then they're already logged in. We should disconnect the old user. Excellent. And then we can do send message types.dsc. This is a new message type that doesn't exist quite yet. So that is s.value address that we send that to. Wonderful. Now, of course, DSC does not exist yet, so let's put that in. This is simply a DSC, disconnection request. And they are going to do a header, and I think nothing else. I don't think we need anything else for a DSC. Yeah, we really, really don't. Okay. So, let's just continue working on this right now. Obviously, the client isn't going to know what to do with a DSC request just yet. But they can only be in the dictionary once, right? So we are going to then break out of this for each loop because we found the one instance that they're already in there. Excellent. So at this point, all seems good. Let's authenticate the user. So at this point, client session dot authenticated equals true. Client session dot account name equals credentials 0, and client session dot account ID is also going to be set here. That equals database manager dot get account ID for credentials 0. Wonderful. Next, we're going to do a quick system dot diagnostics dot debug dot writeline, and this is going to be simply, we'll do a square bracket here because I want to timestamp this. No, that is not how I wanted to do that. Okay, there we go. This is going to be timestamp followed by user 1 successfully authenticated. And then we're going to pass in date time dot now dot toString, and then we will make this be simply hours, minutes, seconds. And then we'll also pass in credentials 0 for that output. Fantastic. And then we'll need to notify the client of success. So we will simply send a message type .arp, and we're going to send a 1 for true for a successful authentication. And this is going to be client session .address. Wonderful. Okay, so that is all that we are going to send there, and that is our authentication, in theory, completely done on the server side. On the client side, we're going to need to implement a couple of things, and we might as well implement one more thing on the server side as well. So let's implement if we receive a disconnection message on the server. So case message types.dsc, this is a, of course, DSC message requesting disconnection. So we're going to say sessions.remove, and we're going to remove received, and in fact, in this case, we'll just do the receive.sender is what exactly? Let's see here. Received is a returns a received. But receive.sender is just client session.address. Yes. So remove client session.address. Like so. And then we need to do send message types.dsc receive.sender. In this case, it would be client session.address. Like so, and then break. So all we do is we remove it from our sessions, and then we send a confirmation that should trigger the client to disconnect, and there we go. So that should be the server completely done with authentication, in theory, assuming I didn't make any mistakes. So let's go to the client now. And at this point, if we receive a disconnect, then we should simply do something like this. So case message types, no, not MSAA quality, message types dot DSC, which doesn't exist yet, and we need to put that into the comms enums. We're just going to copy that from the server. So in the comms enums, we're going to grab this, copy, and paste. Wonderful. So now it knows about the DSC message type. This is a DSC message. For some reason, we were disconnected from the server, and we'll have to reconnect. Wonderful. And then we'll do a break. So up here, all we'll need to do is say connected equals false, because of course the connected is what runs this task factory up here. And then we are going to do add job, and we're going to just put in not a port, we're going to put in a quick job here. Wonderful. And this does not need to have a space. There. So all this job is going to be UI manager dot show modal, and this is simply going to read, you have been disconnected from the server. Wonderful. So now the client knows when it's disconnected. It also knows all of this. So let's go ahead and this is our authentication success here. But let's also change our account creation. So we should go into the login screen here, because the net manager can now send the login message. Now, I don't think we've put in that function just yet. No, indeed, we have not. So we are going to need to implement that. That's basically the same as the account creation message. So we'll put that in right by the account creation message sending here. So public void send authentication. Actually, we'll call it login message. That's what we called it before. So string username and string password. Wonderful. So all we're going to need to do is say string credentials equals string.format, and we're going to do 0, 1. Now obviously, once again, commas are going to cause issues if the comma is contained in the password or username. I don't think it can be contained in the username, but it maybe can be contained in the password. We'll have to check that sometime. So username and password is the arguments that we'll pass in. And this is literally exactly the same from here on out, except I'm just going to copy this. We'll paste it in here. The only difference is that we're sending a different header, and that header is ATH. And now I think we can log in. Just like that. We have our account created, so our account is there. Now the other thing that I want to change is I want to implement in the account creation that it should authenticate us right away. Now, we currently have that disabled in the ACC message right here, authenticate client to do. So we will grab our code here and put that in. So all we need to do here is in the process ACC message method, we need to log the client in. Now I kind of want to put this into its own function here, but I also kind of don't. Like, I don't know. But we're just going to copy this here, this authentication here, and we are going to paste this right here. So client session.authenticated equals true. Account name should be 0. Yes, it is. Wonderful. And our account ID. Wonderful. So that authenticates us on the server side now. And we successfully created an account. And this should also be a successful authentication. Wonderful. So let's fire up the server. About like that. And now we'll fire up the client as well. And we should be able to log in by doing ASDF, ASDF. The login button... Oh, I know what's going on. The encryption handshake hadn't completed yet, so it's freezing while it waits for the handshake to complete. Okay, we got a cryptographic exception there. Well, isn't that typical? So, why did we get a cryptographic exception there? I have to assume that it has to do with the timestamp. That's my initial assumption. And let's find out. So it would be... Oh, I stopped the program. I shouldn't have done that just yet. But I'm assuming that it would be in here. But this is literally handled the same way. Are we appending the timestamp in the login message? Well, it uses client.send. And if we go to that, then it does append the timestamp there. Okay. Well, let's run this one more time. And this time I'm going to take a look at where the actual credential, or rather where the actual error is. So ASDF, ASDF. We'll wait for the encryption handshake to complete. There we go. Submitting information. It's in this int.parse in getAccountID. Input string was not in a correct format. Ah, okay. So, what do we have going on there? What is broken here? This is the first time we've used the getAccountID, so let's take a quick look at this. And let me just pull open the correct thing here. getAccountID. Okay. What did I mess up here? So, string.format, select one from accounts, where account name equals 0, and then we pass in the account name. Fantastic. Object reader equals command.execute scalar. I called this R previously. Oh. That's the problem. So this would need to be R equals. Does that compile? It does not. Let's see here. So we need to just say object R. So this would, we'll return that to object reader equals this. But the reason that this isn't working is because we were using R instead of reader, which works for create account, if I recall correctly. Do we ever use R? Let's find out. No, we don't. Okay, so we'll just do this, and this should now work fine. So we'll run the server. There are build errors. R does not exist. Right. We'll put R back, but we'll leave this as reader because this is an execute scalar. And this should now work. So if we redo this, ASDF, ASDF. Actually, let's do an invalid account. Let's do an invalid password here. Authentication failed. Invalid password. Wonderful. This is the correct password. This is now an incorrect account name. Authentication failed. Invalid account name. Wonderful. So next, ASDF, login. Successfully logged in. Perfect. And if we hop over to the server now, then we will see that if we go to the output of the server, this is the client. If we go to the output of the client, user ASDF successfully authenticated. We did receive connections multiple times here, but that is expected. Wonderful. Okay, and then if we check in here, we'll see the last login. Well, technically that's not getting updated. So we should probably do that when we authenticate the client. So let's hop into the server here, and let's go ahead and create that method that I was talking about. So we'll do public void authenticate client. This should not have a space in it. There we go. We are going to need some parameters here, such as session, client session. We're going to need the string account name, and we're going to need the string account ID for now. Or actually, no, we're not. All we need is the string account name. Client session doesn't contain the account name, does it? It does, but we set that here. So yeah, this'll be fine. So all we need to do is we need to just copy this like so. And this would, of course, instead of credential 0, this would be account name. So I'm just going to copy that and paste that here, as well as here, and as well as here. Wonderful. And then we are just going to do authenticate client, client session, and credentials 0. Wonderful. Should this be within the authentication? Probably. We'll have that be within the authentication too. Okay, so we'll copy that, and we'll need to put that up here. And then we don't need to notify the client of success, because the client should be expecting success. Wonderful. Okay. So that's our client getting authenticated there. And with that broken out into a separate method like that, that just cleans it up a little bit. But we can also write to the database here. We need to do database manager dot. We need to update timestamp. That's going to be a new method. So update timestamp. And we need to pass in string account name. Okay. Of course, it would just be account name. So let's go ahead and do a public static void update timestamp. This is going to simply take in a string account name. There we go. And then all we'll need to do is something like this. We need to update this, and I'm actually not sure how to do this now that I think about it. This is something that I had not planned to do this episode. So maybe that is something that we should do next episode when I figure out how to do that. Because we're now at this point ahead of where my other project is. So yeah, that's probably something that we'll want to do. I need to just look up the syntax for how SQLite does this. So yeah, we'll hold off there, and we will go after this one in the next episode. But hey, that's authentication completely working now, so we can log in. Fantastic. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and I will see you all next time.